Hey everyone, welcome to episode 9 of Mike's Movie Talk, the show where we talk about movies. I'm Mike Myers, and today I have a very special guest with me, Annabelle Norton. And today we're going to be talking about The Shining.
Very excited.
What are your general just opinions on this movie? When someone says The Shining, what do you think about?
Well, it is one of my favorite movies. I think I first watched it when I was back in high school. I was at my friend's house, we were having a sleepover, and she was like, "Let's watch a scary movie." And this is such a random backstory, but her mom was a huge Stephen King fan, and she was introducing her to it. She was like, "I'm gonna make you watch this." So I watched it, and I really liked it. She fell asleep during it and made me watch it all by myself, and I was actually pretty scared. But it was my first introduction to Stephen King, essentially. So I'm a pretty big fan of it. I read the book after seeing the movie, which I know you're not supposed to do, but I also really enjoyed the book as well.
And I've never read the book, so that's probably a mistake. Now that I've seen the movie multiple times.
I actually haven't. We're not going to be pulling excerpts from the book, but I was supposed to bring my first edition, and then I did not have it, and I lied, so
that's
it's okay.
So I want to give you guys a spoiler warning, because we're going to be talking about all kinds of things about The Shining. If you haven't seen it, it's a great movie. Please do. The Shining, it came out in 1980, and it was written and directed by Stanley Kubrick, which we've talked about on the show before, and we'll dive into him more a little bit. And it's based on the Stephen King novel of the same name, as Annabelle has here. And it stars Jack Nicholson, Shelley Duvall, and Scatman Crothers as the main characters, all of which are just amazing in this movie. The performances, so good. I'll give a little plot overview. So it follows writer Jack Torrance as he agrees to become the caretaker for the Overlook Hotel along with his wife Wendy and his son Danny. They eventually become trapped in the hotel due to a snowstorm because they have to look over it for is it 5 months or so?
Yeah, the winter season.
Yeah. So there's a snowstorm, and things just unravel from there as Jack goes crazy.
Yeah.
So I wanted to talk a little bit about Stanley Kubrick before we get into the meat of the movie. It's in the same vein of some of his other work, like 2001, Space Odyssey, Clockwork Orange, like we've talked about. I feel like it's more like 2001 because it's not out to shock you like Clockwork Orange is. But
Eyes Wide Shut.
But
not like that.
Yeah, I haven't seen that either.
Me neither, and I don't know if I'm going to, but
I don't know.
We'll see.
But Stanley Kubrick, he definitely has a feel as a director, or he did. He's not alive anymore. Through the music and the camera work, and just the writing, especially in this movie, the whole movie, you're feeling kind of just a sense of dread, which you're
suspense.
Even from the first shot, them driving down the road. And with the camera work, too, I wanted to point out that this is one of the early movies to use the Steadicam technology, which, you think about, the iconic shot of Danny, driving the big wheel down the hallway.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And just, just iconic shots like that. And then, which the Steadicam, back then was just, revolutionized, how cameras could move around in the set, where they could be obviously Steadicam means the camera is more steady. But just in terms of smooth movement and stuff, it was just it really gives you a different feeling, especially in this movie.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I wanted to talk about too the dedication to his craft that Stanley Kubrick puts in a lot of his movies. And this one I was looking up, the entire hotel that they're in, the Overlook, is built on sound stages. Yeah. The interior. And then even the exterior, they built an entire construction of a life-size construction of the exterior of the hotel, which is just mind-blowing to me.
Yeah, it's insane.
All the rooms and hallways and the outside and the maze too. I'm not sure how they
I'm actually not sure
did that either. Because I know they had a little small-scale model from when they had a shot of it from the top, which is no maze would ever, you could never ever make an actual maze like that, where it's just But I also have here that dedication can go too far sometimes. Yeah.
It's kind of what it's infamous for in many ways.
And Stanley Kubrick, too, was referred to as a super demanding director throughout all the movies. And the scene where Wendy is backing up up the stairs with the baseball bat facing Jack.
Don't hurt me! I'm not gonna hurt you.
Yeah.
I read that he had to he demanded that be reshot or repeated like 127 times.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Like, I
ridiculous.
mean, what?
Yeah, because they like, we can get into this. I don't know if you had it in your notes like a little bit later, but like the way that they treated Shelley Duvall on set was just nasty.
Yeah, and I was gonna touch on that too.
That was kind of part of it.
Because poor Shelley, I mean, she was just, you know, her performance in this movie is absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
You know, I couldn't imagine anyone else in this role.
Yeah,
you know? But like, she became so stressed, you know, because the shooting script would like constantly change, and he'd want stuff to be done over and over and over, and she basically got so stressed that she was like physically sick for like months.
Yeah, I think it definitely like caused her mental health to deteriorate as well, because like not only was he like so like demanding of her, but also like kind of like the rest of the cast and crew shunned her as well. Because I was like reading like before like coming in here, and also like I used to like just look it up just because I was interested in like listen to podcasts and stuff, but like to get her to like dive, because in the book like Wendy's a little bit more like assertive and more like sure of herself, whereas she's a lot more submissive in the film, and so to like for some reason Stanley Kubrick wanted that angle, so he was like to get her to kind of delve into that angle a little bit more. He like kind of like made sure that everyone was like not treating her as well on set, so that she would like appear like a little bit more frazzled on film, and to really like make that like facet of the character come through, and also like Jack Nicholson also like did not treat her well on set either, which I can't remember like how he commented it on, because also like it's kind of similar to the situation like for Singing in the Rain when Gene Kelly was really mean to Debbie Reynolds. But yeah, it just kind of like not like necessarily like, immediately caused her career to go down, but it, like you can see the long-term effects on her to this day.
Yeah, you know, we're talking about like dedication and stuff. You know, obviously you've got a responsibility as a director to take care of your actors,
it was so messed up.
I
like
mean,
it makes me so sad.
Yeah, I mean, when you're pushing somebody that far just to be like, oh yeah, it's got to look real. She's got to look terrified, which she obviously could have done all of that, you know, but you know, like not having all of this done to her, which is it's just insane to think about.
I think it was somebody talking about, it was probably since Batman just came out, someone was talking about Joker recently, and like how like different people have done like method for like different like superhero roles and stuff like that, but somebody pointed out that like no one ever does method for like a kind character, or it's always like applying method acting to like being like mean on set to everyone else, or like being like Jared Leto, or just like with like insane characters, like people acting crazy. Like you never see someone doing method for like a nice character. So this is kind of an example of like no one like, and this is like method in like the bad extreme of like kind of taking it out on her, as well as like Jack Nicholson like being like removed and like distant and not supportive, I think was probably not necessary at all, because they're all very talented people. So.
I didn't hear, I mean, I'm interested, I don't know what you read or saw about Jack Nicholson being
he was just like distant and like removed and like not supportive basically.
God, poor Shelley.
No, that was like my moral conflict with like enjoying the film at first, because like once I like looked into it and read it, I was like, I feel guilty for enjoying it, and so it's just kind of like removing from that, like recognizing it's a good film, but also like I do not.
That's something that can't be ignored.
Yeah, you can't ignore it, and you definitely have to acknowledge it when seeing it.
Yeah. Going back to Stanley Kubrick, you know, just his, you know, I guess over-dedication. The shooting script would constantly be changing, so I mean, that's stress for everybody, but I read that Jack Nicholson just threw away the script because he was like, I know they're going to change, I'm just not going to like memorize it. And so he would like learn his lines just like minutes before they were shot and just go into it, which, I mean, is an awful like environment to act in, but just like the fact that he, you know, pulled through and gave the performance he did just shows how good of an actor he is, which is just, when you go back and watch these scenes, it's just amazing. So.
Absolutely.
I also, something interesting that I found when I was researching this was that like the film's reception, especially when it came out, was like not great for a lot of people. Like a lot of people didn't like it, and like at this time Stanley Kubrick was like, you know, a really famous director. And they were like, you know, this doesn't like hold up to his standard, basically. And it was actually nominated for 2 Razzies, like the Oscars that are just for like bad performances and everything. For worst director, which is you know, crazy for Stanley Kubrick. And another for worst actress for Shelley Duvall.
Which is insane, because I can't believe they would do her like that.
Poor Shelley.
Because she did such a good job.
I know,
despite everything as well. It's just an incredible performance despite everything.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know I don't know what these people had against Shelley, especially, I mean, during the production and even after the movie came out. I mean, worst actors? What?
Yeah, no, that's awful.
I don't
feel like it's very
understand
untrue.
I don't understand. We love Shelley Duvall here.
Yeah, no, we do.
Yeah, so another thing about the reception is that Stephen King was not, and it
Not
still
a fan.
isn't really,
Still not
a fan of this movie. So
Yeah, no, I think that's
Yeah.
that's like a really interesting conversation because I guess he like licensed out the book for Stanley Kubrick because Stanley Kubrick read the book and he was like, oh, like this is cool. I like want to make a movie.
Yeah.
And so, but he like totally like turned it on its head. I mean, anyone who's read the book knows that it's very very different, like plot wise
Yeah.
as well as just kind of like overall vibe. Like it's a very like different like piece. So I mean, it's kind of like a good like segue into talking about like adaptations and like how like you kind of like maneuver around that. And like my personal opinion, I don't know, not everyone holds this, but you kind of have to like look at adaptations as separate from the book because you're never going to be completely happy unless it's like a shot for shot like long miniseries of like a book or something. It's not going to be completely accurate, so it's really like up to a director to kind of make it their own thing. I think it's more enjoyable that way personally than saying like, oh, I didn't like it because it wasn't accurate, because there are some things where it's like, yeah, it needs to be accurate or otherwise it doesn't make sense anymore.
And you're like always comparing the book and the movie, when you have both like that, and just like it's so how do you think like it translated to film, and like do you agree with like his Stanley Kubrick's approach?
I do agree to the approach adaptation. Obviously, like the filming was not very good for everyone who was on set. But like for the approach, I think The Shining is like kind of like a pinnacle, like the example of like making an adaptation your own in like a successful way. So it's like I said earlier, like a totally like different piece from like the book. Like it's like pretty different, like down to the details. Like there's like a whole like pinnacle point in the book where like there's like hedge animals that come to life, and Jack's like, oh, I'm going crazy. They tried it in the miniseries, which I can also talk about, which was not good.
I didn't even know there was a miniseries.
Yeah, there was a miniseries that Stephen King actually helped write the screenplay for, and it flopped, which is probably why you've not heard of it.
Yeah, when was this?
I would think it was like 80s or 90s, and like he was like, I want like a good adaptation, like I'm gonna help write it, and nobody liked it. It was not good. It was just they didn't have a very big budget, so it was just kind of corny. But it was more accurate to the book, and some people liked it, like some Stephen King fans like it. But otherwise, I think The Shining, like the movie with Stanley Kubrick, is like the better adaptation. But there's like just like a lot of differences. Like in the book, it's a mallet instead of an axe, so that's something that's completely different, which is kind of iconic for the movie.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And then like the Here's Johnny line is also in the book. That was just like improv.
And he did improvise that, and it was funny because I was reading about these little like trivia facts and stuff, and the Here's Johnny thing is from like the intro to the Johnny Carson Tonight Show. Yeah.
Here's Johnny.
Which was the big talk show back then, and Stanley Kubrick didn't even know of this because he was not from the United States. Yeah. So he's like, "What? Here's Johnny? What are you talking about?" And that's just like gone on to become such an iconic. Movie
very
line.
iconic.
It's just funny behind that.
Another thing that's kind of like interesting to think about is the fact that like when Stephen King was writing this, like he was still like struggling with like his alcoholism and like his drug abuse. So that's like something that he talks about a lot. Like also like on writing like his book about like his like writing, obviously. He talks about like how he doesn't like remember writing some of his books, and like a lot of like books that you see like The Shining as well as like Misery are about like authors. Misery was so good, and the movie too. But a lot of his books are kind of like semi-autobiographical in a way, as like kind of an allegory for like his struggle with these things. So what he didn't like about I think The Shining movie is that like, especially, I think he mentioned that he didn't want Jack Nicholson to play the role because he had already done One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and people would already view like Jack Torrance as kind of insane. If they hadn't read the book, they would have like that connotation going into it from Jack Nicholson. But he really wanted to highlight in the book that like he wasn't crazy from the get-go, and it was like the powers of like the Overlook who were like taking over and kind of infesting him in a way.
Just kind of like corrupt. I mean, he was a good man, and then just corrupted him into
and like. And the book is like a lot more nuanced in his character and kind of like shows like his backstory more. So I think they definitely inform each other. But I think the main reason, like one of the main reasons, anyways, that he didn't like the movie as much is because you kind of like get the idea that like Jack is crazy from the beginning and like the alcohol does not help. And it's a lot more like, it's less of like a dynamic character, I think. Not that his performance isn't like great, obviously, but I think the way that the character is written is a lot more, like a lot less nuanced than it is in the book. Yeah, it's a lot more gradual, and he starts off as more of like a good person, and you get a lot of flashbacks as well, which they don't explain in the movie at all, to like him like being like a school teacher and like why he was fired, why he's taking this job, and like their life like before they moved to the Overlook.
You really barely get any of that in the movie.
Yeah,
it's just
you really get
like
no
mentions,
context.
And there's no, Yeah.
I think that's what makes the movie so interesting is that like it still like really holds up despite not having that context, but also like, reading the book definitely helps because I think the movie is just a really great example of like performance and like cinematography.
Oh yeah, for sure. How did you interpret the ending? Like
That's
the
such
photograph
a good question.
of him, like
Yeah.
you know, so he's like the what was his name, like Lloyd?
Yeah.
The guy, like the guy at the bar, the bartender. He was like, "Oh, you've always been the caretaker," you know, which is, and then he's at this 1920s party.
Yeah, and there's a photo. Yeah, it's like 1927 or something like that.
And he's in the photo.
Yeah, it's very ambiguous. And like I, of course, like when I was at that sleepover and I looked up like after the movie was done on her laptop, I was like, "Ending of The Shining explained."
Yeah.
But honestly, I think it just kind of like gets into like I think it is meant to be ambiguous, and also
it is,
I don't want to speak too much on it because I don't know. But like kind of like how I interpret it is like very ambiguous and kind of like just like the general like overtaking of like the spirits that kind of like get locked up like in the Overlook Hotel. I forget like what the technical term that he has is for them, but like you see it in like Dr. Sleep as well, like just like the generations and generations of like weird stuff that goes on there and how like all of like those spirits are essentially trapped, which you get I think a lot more information on. He kind of delves into it in the Dr. Sleep. Yeah,
and I think like I mean you can even say like there's so many big questions you can take from the ending, which probably you know won't ever be answered like definitively. Like you know, is this whole thing even real, or is he like a reincarnation of someone that used to be there in the 20s?
Yeah,
or,
like how does it work?
It gets I mean we could talk about this for hours, you know, just like the theories and everything that everybody has.
Absolutely, because that's like where it gets complicated because like in the book he starts out as a good person, and so like was he like destined to be there and then it like took over him, but then like if he was originally like his own like individual person and it like wasn't like destined to happen, like how did he get in that photograph, like how does that work? Which is like where I get stuck kind of in a loop.
So how about like in the book, like how does it approach that ending? Is it similar to the movie or like...
I think it's pretty similar. It's been like 2 years since I read it, so I don't quite remember, but I'm pretty sure it's pretty similar.
Okay. Well, is there anything else that you want to talk about? It can be about like The Shining or Stephen King in general.
Yes.
Just...
I could literally talk about this for hours. Just kind of like talking about like other like Stephen King adaptations and how like they relate to The Shining. We can talk about Dr. Sleep, which we were kind of talking about before we started filming. And maybe it's just because I fell for the nostalgia bait hard. But the thing is, I think Stephen King fell for it too, because like when he was commenting
did he like it?
Yeah, he said that he really liked it because he said like I was reading over the script and like he really seamlessly like ties together like my book and my original book with Kubrick's version. I thought that was interesting because it definitely does it's definitely more like married to like Kubrick's version. Like they reference like all the iconography and stuff like that. So he actually really liked it because it like made him not necessarily like appreciate Kubrick's version more, but he was like I feel like it ties it together like. Because, like, obviously, like, no one's going to erase the Kubrick's version out of history because it's good and everyone likes it. But he actually really liked Dr. Sleep, and I personally did, too. I thought it was fun.
That's cool. And it's cool thinking about, like, you know, I don't know who directed that, or directed Dr. Sleep, but you have to take, like, into consideration not only, you know, Stephen King's book, but like you know the movie is such has been so impactful in pop culture and just like integrating that into the sequel. It's a
huge challenge.
Making a movie of the sequel to the book, but also kind of the movie. Which is,
it was definitely a very like when you think about it, like you wouldn't think about it at first, but like it's a very like interesting like combination of like 3 like texts into one. It's very interesting.
That is really cool. You know, obviously The Shining is, you know, some people would say it's a masterpiece, but I mean Dr. Sleep to me, it was just like silly sometimes.
It definitely could be because like we were saying earlier, like having like if you had told me like Stephen King's coming out with a sequel to The Shining and it's about vampires, I would have been like, okay, sure, but it was. But I had like a really stacked cast. It was really good. Ewan McGregor.
I love him.
Yeah, I just love him so much. So that's what made me excited to see it. And I thought it was done really well. It's just I think that the pacing like got slow in like 1 or 2 moments for me, but otherwise I really enjoyed it.
I think too, like I mean, I wouldn't say either of these stories are you know like believable, like and like grounded in reality because there's obviously a bunch of supernatural stuff, but like Dr. Sleep was like it kind of pushed it more out there than The Shining did in terms of like you know I'd be watching it and be like what you know really, and then The Shining is more like I don't know, it just kind of like gets under your skin and just like more than Dr. Sleep ever really did.
Yeah, I think I would say I would agree just because like I think with like especially the Shining movie it's a lot more like ambiguous, it's a lot more suspenseful and it's like really like built around like the way that it's like shot and the way that it's written rather than like all like the backstory, I guess, like the explanation. Like you're kind of like supposed to have all these theories about it, whereas I feel like Doctor Sleep expands on a lot of it, and like while it does like make sense of The Shining a little bit, it's also like a lot of like backstory and information. So it's kind of like a balance. Like I did like that, but also I really like the ambiguity of like the original Shining movie.
Yeah. It'd be interesting if Stanley Kubrick was still alive if he directed Doctor Sleep.
That would have been very, very interesting. I wonder how that would go.
Stephen King would probably be like, no, I don't want this guy adapting any more of my books.
Because yeah, he said like about Kubrick, like, oh, I really like him. I think he's like a really talented director and smart guy. I just did not like what he did with my book. And I was like, well, it's like a different, like, you can see it as a different text. Like, feel free to think it's totally separate, honestly.
Yeah. Which is a good thing to take with, like, you know, all adaptations. Not just Stephen King, but like anything. You know, it's just a different... You can't keep... I mean, comparing is going to happen to the book and stuff, but like, if you just like, oh my god, you know, this wasn't... They didn't say this line in the book, or they didn't say it in the movie, you know.
Yeah.
Just like, you got to look at it as kind of two different worlds of the same kind of story.
Yeah, because like if you like did it for like shot for shot, like what would be the point? Because like you already have the book and it's the whole thing, so it's kind of like more fun and I think like more like productive to like the artistic world. Not to get too heady, but like I think it's like it contributes more to like have like just like a couple like variations as well. I think it's important.
Yeah, I think so too.
I was looking at an article before I came in about like Stephen King's reaction to every single adaptation that's ever happened of his work.
Oh my god, yeah.
And so some of them he was like, this is crap, and some of them were like, oh, like this is really good.
Crap.
Yeah, because he really liked Misery, which I'm a huge fan of the book and the movie. I think that's like one of his like best like works in my opinion. And Kathy Bates in the movie is so good. I love that movie so much. Fan. It's so good, and like it's interesting because that's another like semi-autobiographical one.
Yeah,
because it like kind of deals, which is something also really interesting. I could like again talk about this for hours, but like with her like it being about like him and a fan, it's like kind of like interesting to see like how he interacts with like his own fan base, because like it gets into that which are definitely I'm included in it, but it's definitely interesting. But like kind of like the concept of like as we've been doing today, like discussing his work and like how how he like interacts with his fans and like how much he thinks that people can comment on like what he's done versus like I guess like what's valuable criticism, and like the concept of like the fan knowing more about the author because they love the work so much, which is taken to extremes, of course. In Misery, spoiler alert, he loses most of his limbs.
You know, talking about adaptations, you know, to film, you gotta like, you know, think about it's so different making a movie than it is a book. You got to think about like pacing, and then you know you can't include everything in the book, otherwise it'd be like a 5-hour movie, and then you know stuff like that. So and then all the creative stuff that you know people can change as they make the movie. But for sure. I really liked Misery too.
It's so good. It's so I enjoyed it so much. I always like pick like one like big like Stephen King work to like watch like the movie, read the book, like do all the research around Halloween, because I don't know, it just gets me like I don't know, it's the vibes, like when like I don't know, when as soon as like the weather gets cool, I'm like it's Stephen King season for me. Essentially. But I think like 2 years ago I read Carrie as well, which I think you said you didn't see.
I have not seen Carrie.
Watch it.
I know.
It's so good. The original one though, not the new one. The new one, I don't think it adds anything, because I haven't seen the new one either, and I was like listening to a podcast and they're like, it doesn't add anything to the book or the movie. I was like, okay.
All right, so anyway, you know, looping back to The Shining.
Yeah, that was a very long tangent. My bad.
And we can all edit this stuff out anyway. But anyway, so The Shining. Big takeaway. Would you recommend The Shining to people who haven't seen it?
I would recommend The Shining. Yeah. It's just like such a staple and like just like film history. It's influenced so many other things, and it's based on a very influential book as well. It just kind of like covers all the bases of kind of like integrating into pop culture, and also just covers so many like different topics like we were talking about today, like adaptations, how like people are treated on set, like innovations in cinematography, all that good stuff. I definitely recommend it.
Go check it out! Go check it out.
And if you like The Shining, there's 2 different rabbit holes you can go down to. One, you could go down the rabbit hole of the Stanley Kubrick movies.
Yes, absolutely.
Which is you know, I don't know if anyone would want to do that but I mean you could. It's not for everybody. Or you could also go down the rabbit hole of Stephen King.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
There's 2 different worlds there, like worlds colliding here. But yeah, I mean I really enjoyed this movie, and you know if you haven't seen it, it's definitely one to put on your list.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So thank you, Annabelle, for coming on to the show.
Yes.
And thank you guys for watching. And we'll see you in the next episode in 2 weeks.
Yes.
See you guys later.